Was a quiet weekday afternoon at a small cafe in Los Angeles, where Keanu Reeves often retreated to find peace in between his busy schedule. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as patrons sipped their drinks and chatted softly. Emma, a waitress at the cafe, moved with a quiet efficiency, her usual warm smile replaced by a distant, preoccupied expression. Keanu had noticed her change in demeanor over the past few weeks. She was always polite and kind, but something about her felt heavier, as though she was carrying a weight no one else could see. At first, he didn't say anything, respecting her space, but today something compelled him to ask. Emma, he said gently as she refilled his cup, you seem a little different lately. Is everything all right? Emma hesitated, clutching the coffee pot as she debated whether to brush off his concern or open up. Finally, she let out a sigh, her shoulders slumping slightly. It's been a tough time, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Keanu nodded, silently encouraging her to continue. My brother, she began, her voice breaking. He's only 19, and he's been diagnosed with leukemia. He's been trying to afford his treatment, but She stopped, swallowing hard. It's been impossible. I've taken extra shifts, sold whatever I could, but it's not enough. And watching him go through this, knowing I can't do more, it's tearing me apart. Keanu listened intently, his heart heavy with empathy. He could see the pain etched on her face, the desperation in her voice. Emma quickly apologized, brushing away a tear. I'm sorry. You didn't need to hear all that. But Keanu shook his head. No need to apologize, he said. I'm glad you told me. For the next few days, Keanu thought about Emma's story. Her strength in the face of such adversity moved him deeply. He couldn't shake the thought of her brother and the uphill battle they were fighting. The following week, Keanu returned to the cafe carrying a simple envelope. As Emma approached his table, he handed it to her. For your brother, he said softly. Emma frowned, confused, and opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $20,000, enough to cover her brother's medical expenses and more. Her eyes widened, and she stared at Keanu, overwhelmed. I can't accept this, she stammered. You can, Keanu said firmly but kindly, and you will. Consider it a gift, not just from me, but from someone who believes in you and your family. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she clutched the envelope. Thank you, she whispered. I don't even know how to say it enough. Keanu gave her a small smile. Just promise me one thing. Never stop fighting for him. From that day on, Emma's life began to change. The weight she had been carrying felt a little lighter, and the hope she had nearly lost began to return. But it wasn't just the money that made the difference. It was the gesture itself. For the first time in months, Emma felt truly seen, her struggles acknowledged by someone who didn't owe her anything. The next time Keanu came to the cafe, Emma greeted him with a genuine smile. I don't think I can ever repay you, she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. You don't have to, he replied with a gentle shrug. Just keep going. That's all that matters. Over the weeks, Emma began to open up more, sharing snippets of her life and her brother's progress. Keanu listened intently, offering words of encouragement that always seemed to be exactly what she needed to hear. Their conversations became a small but meaningful part of Emma's routine, and for Keanu, it was a reminder of why small acts of kindness could matter so much. Months later, the cafe hosted a quiet evening event, a small acoustic performance by a local musician. Emma invited Keanu, hoping he'd enjoy the music, but also because she had something to share. After the final song, Emma took the microphone, her hands shaking slightly as she stood in front of the small crowd. I wanted to take a moment to thank someone who changed my life, she began, her eyes searching the room until they landed on Keanu. Not just by what he gave me, but by showing me that people care, that even when everything feels impossible, there are moments of light. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. Because of his kindness, my brother is now recovering. The treatment worked, and he's even started writing music again, a dream he thought he'd lost forever. And for me, I've learned that it's okay to lean on others when things get hard, that vulnerability doesn't make you weak. The room erupted into applause, but Keanu's expression remained humble, almost shy. He gave Emma a small nod as if to say, it was nothing. But Emma knew it wasn't nothing. It was everything. That night, as the cafe emptied and the last of the lights dimmed, Emma approached Keanu one last time. You didn't just help me, she said softly. You reminded me of what I'd forgotten, that there's still good in the world, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life paying that forward. Keanu smiled, his eyes warm. That's all I could ever hope for. Over the following year, Emma's life transformed in ways she hadn't dared to dream of. Her brother, inspired by his recovery, recorded an album that gained local acclaim. Emma herself began volunteering at a community center, helping others who were struggling as she once had. And though Keanu's visits to the cafe became less frequent as life pulled him in different directions, Emma never forgot what he had done for her. She kept his note framed in her small apartment, a constant reminder of the power of kindness. Years later, during an interview about his own journey, Keanu was asked why he had helped a stranger in such an extraordinary way. He paused, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Because sometimes the smallest gestures can have the biggest impact. And sometimes you meet people who just need a little reminder that they're not alone. Emma watched that interview from her living room, tears in her eyes, as she smiled at the man who had changed her life. She knew then, as she had always known, that she would carry his kindness forward, letting it ripple out into the world, one small act at a time. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. We've come to the end of another emotional story. See you again.